Daniel and Rebecca Harris seemed like a loving couple on a birthday getaway to the Rocky Mountains, but what began as a romantic trip quickly turned into a chilling fight for survival when Rebecca claimed her husband tried to push her off a 1,000-foot cliff. In the summer of 2019, Daniel and Rebecca Harris seemed like the perfect couple preparing for a memorable trip. They lived in Denver, Colorado, where Rebecca worked as a school teacher, and Daniel ran a small construction business that had seen better days. Rebecca's 34th birthday was approaching, and Daniel suggested celebrating it in a special way. He planned a trip to the Rocky Mountains, a place Rebecca had always loved for its sweeping trails, fresh air, and dramatic landscapes. To friends and family, the getaway looked like a thoughtful gesture, the kind of romantic escape that might heal whatever unspoken cracks were forming in their marriage. Rebecca posted pictures on social media the day before they left, suitcases packed neatly by the door, hiking boots resting on the porch, and a caption that read, "Birthday adventure with my love." To anyone looking in, it seemed like a picture-perfect plan. The couple booked a small wooden cabin near Estes Park, nestled against the backdrop of thick forests and jagged peaks. The cabin was cozy and quiet, far removed from the noise of city life, the kind of place where love could be rekindled. But beneath the surface, their relationship had been strained for months. Close friends recalled Rebecca confiding about frequent arguments, though she never gave full details. Some mentioned Daniel's growing temper, others whispered about money problems. There were rumors about late nights Daniel couldn't explain, and Rebecca had recently noticed suspicious charges on their joint credit card. Yet, instead of sharing these struggles openly, they both tried to carry on as though nothing was wrong. As they set off for the mountains on July 20th, Rebecca felt a mix of excitement and unease. She wanted to believe the trip would bring them closer, but something in Daniel's quiet mood suggested otherwise. It was a silence that hung heavier than the mountain air, a silence that hinted their story might not end with birthday candles and laughter. On the morning of July 22nd, the third day of their trip, the couple set out early for a hike. The air was cool, with streaks of sunlight breaking through the tall pines as they made their way along the winding trail. Daniel suggested visiting Eagle's Drop, a cliffside lookout known among hikers for its panoramic views. The spot was breathtaking but also dangerous, with jagged rocks and a sheer drop nearly 1,000 feet to the valley floor. It was the kind of place where people took photos to capture the beauty, but most stayed back from the edge out of caution. Rebecca carried her camera, pausing often to photograph wildflowers, pine cones, and distant mountain peaks. Other hikers who passed them later remembered her energy and warmth, while Daniel was described as unusually quiet, walking with his hands shoved in his pockets and eyes fixed ahead. His mood seemed out of step with the festive nature of the birthday trip. By the time they reached the lookout point, the morning sun had risen higher, casting a golden light over the valley. Rebecca stood a few feet from the edge, pointing her camera outward, trying to capture the depth of the view. According to what she would later tell investigators, Daniel encouraged her to move closer, telling her she could get a better picture if she leaned forward just slightly. Minutes later, a chilling sound echoed across the trail. Hikers nearby reported hearing a sharp scream that cut through the still air. Rebecca was found clinging to a rocky ledge just below the lookout, her arms scraped and bruised, her face pale with shock. Daniel quickly called emergency services, reporting that his wife had slipped. But when rescuers arrived, Rebecca told a very different story, one that suggested her fall was no accident at all. Detectives arrived at the scene within hours, determined to piece together what had really happened on the cliff. Rebecca was taken to a nearby hospital where doctors confirmed she had bruising along both arms, consistent with someone being grabbed or pushed. Her clothing was torn, and her palms were cut from scraping against the rock as she struggled to hold on. When questioned, she explained that Daniel had urged her to stand closer to the edge for a photo, then suddenly shoved her from behind. She remembered the shock of feeling hands press against her back and the desperate scramble to save herself before tumbling into the valley below. Daniel's version was very different. He told investigators that Rebecca had slipped on loose gravel, and he had rushed to help her as she fell. He denied pushing her and insisted he was the one who saved her by shouting for help and calling 911. but his story began to unravel under closer examination. His clothes showed streaks of dirt on the sleeves, and there were small scratches across his knuckles, as though he had been in a physical struggle. Rangers who examined the scene also noticed disturbed soil near the lookout, which suggested more than just a slip. Detectives secured Daniel's phone and discovered troubling evidence. In the weeks leading up to the trip, he had searched terms like deadly falls in Rocky Mountains and can police tell if it's an accident. He had also looked up life insurance policies, specifically ones that paid out in the event of accidental death. When officers cross-checked financial records, they discovered a recent $500,000 life insurance policy in Rebecca's name, with Daniel listed as the sole beneficiary. The picture was shifting quickly. What at first looked like a tragic accident was starting to resemble something far more sinister. As investigators dug deeper, a darker portrait of Daniel began to take shape. His financial records revealed years of mounting debt, much of it tied to failed business ventures and gambling losses. Credit card bills were overdue, and foreclosure notices had been mailed to his office. Friends later testified that Daniel often spoke about feeling trapped in his marriage, complaining about money and responsibilities. To the outside world, the birthday trip seemed like an act of love, but investigators began to see it as a calculated opportunity. Detectives also uncovered evidence of an affair. Messages retrieved from Daniel's phone revealed late-night conversations with another woman, someone he had met months earlier through a construction contract. The messages were flirtatious, but what alarmed investigators was the way Daniel hinted at a future with her. In several texts, he wrote about wanting a fresh start and described Rebecca as an obstacle in his life. While he never explicitly mentioned killing his wife, the tone of the conversations raised serious suspicions. When confronted with the insurance policy, Daniel claimed it was routine financial planning. He insisted that many couples took out such policies and argued that the timing was merely coincidence. Yet the sheer value of the payout, coupled with his worsening debts, made his explanation unconvincing. Prosecutors began quietly preparing an attempted murder case, believing the motive was clear: financial freedom and a new life without Rebecca. Still, not everyone was certain. Daniel hired an aggressive defense attorney who painted Rebecca's accusations as emotional overreaction. The lawyer emphasized the dangerous terrain of the lookout point and argued that even the smallest misstep could cause a fall. With no clear video evidence or eyewitness account of the actual push, the case hinged on circumstantial evidence. For investigators, the challenge was turning suspicion into undeniable proof. The trial began in the summer of 2021, nearly 2 years after the Cliffside incident, and it quickly became one of the most closely followed cases in Colorado. The courtroom was filled with tension as Rebecca took the stand, recounting in painful detail how she felt her husband's hands press against her back. She described the terror of dangling above the valley, her fingers clinging to sharp rock as she fought for her life. Her voice shook, but her account was unwavering. Jurors listened closely, many visibly moved by her story. The prosecution built its case around motive and preparation. They presented Daniel's internet searches about fatal falls, the life insurance policy, and his financial struggles as proof of intent. They highlighted the text messages to his lover, suggesting Daniel was desperate to start over, but needed money to do it. To the prosecution, the story was clear. Daniel had planned the perfect crime, disguising murder as an accident in the wilderness. The defense struck back just as forcefully. They brought in expert witnesses who testified about the instability of Eagle's Drop, describing how many hikers had slipped or fallen in the area before. They suggested that Rebecca's memory could have been clouded by fear and adrenaline, and that bruises on her arms could have come from grabbing rocks, not from being pushed. Daniel sat calmly through the proceedings, at times even shaking his head when accusations grew heavy. His attorney emphasized the absence of direct evidence, No video, no eyewitnesses to the alleged shove, only Rebecca's word against his. After weeks of testimony, the jury remained divided. Some believed Daniel had carefully plotted his wife's death, while others questioned whether there was enough proof beyond doubt. The deadlock ended in a mistrial. Daniel walked free, at least temporarily, while prosecutors vowed to retry the case. Rebecca filed for divorce, leaving behind the mountains forever. Yet the lingering question still haunted everyone. Was she truly the victim of a failed murder, or had the truth slipped away with the silence of the cliffside that morning?